I am here. I got a snack is what I did. And then I kind of had to clean my teeth out as well. Yes, I did. And get myself adjusted. It's my 35th wedding anniversary today. But my husband passed. And we were divorced. But he was here. 35 years ago. There was a reason I wanted to tell an earlier class that, but I can't remember what it was. And we need to get to our book because we're already 5 minutes late. More than that, Dr. Farovich. Way more than that. 7 minutes late you are. Let's get to it. The Mostly True Adventures of Homer P. Figg. I did not know that this was about. What is it about? The Underground Railroad. Didn't know. Goes with our early bird classroom, our bookless classroom. Goes with our bookless classroom really well. Chapter 11. Do you want to see the flowers? They're doing okay. I have new ones, which I didn't get out. Had a couple issues yesterday, being that it is my anniversary today. Yeah. The weasel comes a-calling. There's a whole other world in Mr. Brewster's basement. Must be 20 people hiding down there and 2 babies wrapped in blankets. 2 or 3 families all on the run, looking to find a new life. On the run all the way from Maryland, with slave catchers dogging their trail. The fugitives look thin and hungry and scared. They jump at every sound from above. The squeak of the floor when Mrs. Bean walks across the kitchen, a window rattling in the wind, the sad cooing of a mourning dove up in the eaves. Every noise makes them nervous and fearful. I'm going to turn off the heater here. It still is cold here in this house in Michigan. I don't have to worry so much about air in the summertime. Mr. Brewster says that fear is something slaves carry with them, and they won't be rid of it until they're safe across the border in Canada with nobody to snatch them back. Some of these folks have escaped more than once, only to be seized by slave catchers and taken back. Makes it worse for this particular group because their brave conductor, Samuel Reed, vanished into thin air. They figure if it can happen to him, it can happen to them. If Stink and Smelt have their way, it will. All I do is offer shelter for a night or two, Mr. Brewster explains. The real work, the dangerous work, is done by the likes of Mr. Reed. The basement is fixed up real nice with rugs on the floor and rows of sturdy bunks and plenty of food and special baffles to keep the lantern light from shining out the basement windows. Baffles would be shades that are like kind of do that keep out the light when they have the light on. I'm kind of guessing from what I know. It's way better than the barn where me and Harold lived, but no matter how nice Mr. Brewster made the place, it's still a kind of dungeon, even if there are no padlocks or chains. You can feel it in the air, the people wanting to get out, to be free of this place or any place where they've got to be afraid. I would have these poor folk in my own house as honored guests, but there are many who would burn us out if we did so, Mr. Brewster says, bringing me up out of the basement. Burn us to the ground, they would. Thee think runaway slaves are fearful? Their fear is nothing to the fear the white man has of the black. Abolitionists who preach against slavery will not let colored worshipers sit with whites in their churches. They think it unclean that light and dark should mix. How will they get to where they're going? I asked. Same way they got here, he says, on foot and in wagons, but mostly on foot. With slave catchers lurking, they must travel at night under cover of darkness, especially on cloudy and moonless nights, like this evening, for example. He doesn't say so exactly, but he means the slaves will be on the move tonight. What should I do? I ask him. Mr. Brewster sets me down in the kitchen where Mrs. Bean has put out steaming plates of beef and potatoes slathered in gravy. Thee must do whatever is true to thee, he says. It's not for me to force a thing upon thee or to make thee believe as I believe. I never had such a plate of food in my life. Squint wasn't much for plates for that matter, but what I saw in the basement has killed my appetite. Men and women and children and babies all running from those who would chain them up and buy them and sell them like cattle. Gets me to thinking how much I hated it when Squintin' Leach locked us up or whipped us with his belt or sold Harold into the army like he was something Squint owned. Get a gun, I urge Mr. Brewster. He shakes his great white head. That I cannot do. I am sworn to peace. Mrs. Bean, I say, tell him to get a gun. Mrs. Bean chuckles and gives me a sad smile. Gave up on that years ago, she says. He will not stir from his beliefs. If you won't get a gun, then tell me what to do, I ask, pleading. The sigh so deep it almost makes the windows rattle. Thee must decide, he says again. But I will say this much. It all boils down to this. A person has only two options in life: to do something or to do nothing. It means that if thee do nothing, thee may stay in this house. Thee will be safe and cared for and will never go hungry. Mrs. Bean will see to that. Or thee can do something to help Mr. Smelt and his Confederates, or something to help those who have escaped their chains. This isn't fair, Mrs. Bean admonishes him, shaking her gravy ladle. He's just a boy, and a scrawny one at that. I know, says Mr. Brewster, sounding regretful, but boys are fighting this cruel war. Boys are enslaved, and boys own slaves. None may escape. All must decide. If you won't get a gun, then give me one, I ask, begging. There are no guns in this house, not for thy purpose. I shake my head. Comes to me that Jebediah Brewster is crazy, and that's like God himself being crazy as plagues and pestilence, and crazy as a tree that fell on my father and my dear mother dying so young, and Squint being so mean. I can't stand another minute of this with all the questions in my head, trying to decide things that are better left to God and Mr. Brewster. Where are you going? Mrs. Bean calls out when I get up from the table. What are you going to do? But I'm running out the door without an answer, running into the sooty blue darkness where Smelt is waiting. Smelt with his knife and probably a gun too. And I've got no idea what to do. No idea at all. Except I know one thing. I can't do nothing. Nothing is not an option. Chapter 12, The Door in the Dirt. Brewster's privy looks better cared for than Squint's whole house and is nearly as big. It's got fancy wood trim, all painted neat and white, and a half moon cut in the door. Very civilized and way better than the cow ditch me and Harold used when we had to do our own business out behind the barn. I'm in most ways to the privy door when a dirt-colored hand clamps over my mouth and yanks me into the shadows behind the building. Smelt with his knife like I figured. Evening, boy, he whispers, his nasty little eyes flickering to the big house. If you try and scream, I'll wring your neck and drop your body into the cesspit. Not if you understand. I nod. Smelt grins, showing me his tooth. Fatten you up, did they? Fuss over you some? Hope you enjoyed it, boy. Hope you paid attention, 'cause if you can't tell me where they hid them fugitives, this world's got no more use for Homer Figg. You might well jump in that cesspit and save me the trouble. My brain has been racing since I run from the house, trying to find a lie that will save me and the runaway slaves, and Mr. Brewster too, comes to me in that very moment with Smelt jabbing the point of his knife in my ribs, looking for a soft spot. Don't know if the lie is powerful enough to work, but it's the only one I have at the moment. Gemstones, I exclaim. Tourmaline. Hush your voice, boy, he hisses. In the mine, I tell him. They're hiding in the old tourmaline mine. That filthy hand of his starts squeezing my neck. The mine. Who told you, the cook or the old man? Showed me, I say, gasping at his hands as his hand tightens. You say he took you up to the mine and showed you where he's got the slaves hid? You expect me to believe that? The part of the lie I'm counting on is that Smelt doesn't know he was spotted shadowing me and Jebediah Brewster to the mines. Best kind of lie has some truth in it, just like Smelt said. Used to drive my brother Harold crazy when I'd tell folks our dear father was killed by a tree that measured a mile high from roots to top. The tree was real, but the mile wasn't. And Harold said that made it worse, telling a lie that was partway true. I can see in Smelt's eyes that he's trying to catch me lying, but hasn't so far because he knows Mr. Brewster really did show me the mine. I've been all over that site, Smelt says, puzzling it out. Didn't see no fugitive slaves nor any place to hide them. Old shed with the rusty tin roof, I tell him, making it up as I go along. There's a secret passage in the shed. Nothing in that shed but rocks and dirt, he says suspiciously. Under the dirt, I tell him. There's a door under the dirt. Mr. Brewster wouldn't let me go down there, but he lifted the door up enough with his foot so I could see the ladder down. Hole in the dirt don't mean nothing, he said. It's a mine. There's lots of holes in the dirt. Heard a baby crying, I tell him. That gets his attention. Probably he knows the fugitives have a child or two. Baby crying, you say? Yes, sir. He presses the knife harder. Another twitch and he'll be drawing blood. Tell me the truth now. Why'd a man like Jebediah Brewster show you where he's hid them fugitives? Why'd he trust a lying boy like you? Said it was up to me whether I wanted to help or run away. Smelt makes a face, nods himself. Sounds like that Quaker fool. So now you know, right? Maybe I do and maybe I don't. I did what you wanted. Give me back my horse. That makes him laugh. It makes my horse now. It's my horse now. For sparing your worthless life. You promised to let me go. I insist. I've got to find my brother before he gets to the war. In the dark, he looks like a jack-o'-lantern with one snaggly tooth, grinning me for a fool. That wasn't the deal. The deal was, do like I say, and I might let you live. It's still night, boy. Show me this door in the dirt, and then we'll see who's lying and who's dying. Then he stuffs a rag in my mouth, whips a rope around my wrist, and drags me off into the night. When I was little and we first went to live with our uncle Squintin Leach, the thing I was most scared of, other than the dark, was my brother Harold disappearing. Our father was gone and our dear mother too, and it seemed like my brother would be next, and then I'd be all alone in the world. I'd wake up crying and afraid, and to soothe me, Harold told stories about pirates and Indians. The pirates and Indians wanted to get us, but couldn't, no matter how hard they tried. Harold always made me the one who saved us. I'd trick the pirates and we'd get away. Or I'd show him how to hide from the Indians, and he'd tell me how clever and brave I was, only it was him making up the story, not me. Harold never believed in pirates, not real pirates, and the only Indians left in Pine Swamp worked for the timber company felling trees. It was only made-up stories to make me feel safe. We never had a story about someone like Ebenezer Smelt because we never knew a man that bad really existed. A man that'll hunt innocent people like animals and drag a boy through the dark of night and threaten to kill him. Some things are worse than the worst kind of nightmare, and it turns out the only thing worse than Ebenezer Smelt is his partner, Stink Mullins, who's waiting for us in the woods. The moment we get there, Stink grabs the rope, throws me to the ground, and kicks the air out of me. You was thinking something bad, he says, satisfied. That'll teach you. Then he grabs the rag from my mouth and dabs at his empty eye socket. Lucky for me, he decides to keep the rag and jams it in his pocket. Where they hid? Asks Smelt. The boy find out? Says they're at the mine in a secret tunnel. You believe him, do you? I don't believe nothing I see. I don't believe nothing till I see it with my own eyes. Where's Festus? In the lean-to, trussed up like a turkey, Stink says with a chuckle. That darky is too scared to move, let alone get himself free. I don't know why they call Samuel Reed, the conductor, Festus. I figure he's got about as much chance of seeing the sunrise as I do once they figure out I'm lying about the mine. Unless I can come up with a better lie, one that will set us both free. They on the move tonight? Stink asked, prodding at me with his boot. Best I can do is nod. That's enough to get us up and moving again. There is no moon in the sky and only a few dim stars showing through the clouds, but the two men know where they're going. Before long, they're on the trail up to the mine, following the wagon's rut. The dark feels heavy, like a thick blanket that won't let you breathe, and the ground is hard and sharp under my feet. Suddenly, Smelt holds up his hand and stops us. You hear that? Pebbles skitter down from the hills around us. Ground is always moving here, says Stink. All that scavenged from the mine. Something's out there, Smelt complains. Something alive. Raccoon or skunk, says Stink with a laugh. What you afraid of? Nothing. Afraid of an old Quaker man that won't lift a hand to defend himself? Afraid of a bunch of scared to death darkies? Shut up. The strange thing of it is, the closer we get to the mine, the calmer I feel. Doesn't make sense because I still don't know what to say when they find there's no door in the dirt. Maybe the strange calm feeling is what happens when a man stands up for the firing squad or climbs the gallows to be hung. Like you're calm because the waiting part is almost over and you're tired of being afraid. Only difference, it's so dark I won't need a blindfold. We come at last to the old tin shed at a place so empty even the ghosts have gone away. Stink pulls me up short on the rope. He smells worse than the cesspit, worse than rotten eggs or a dead cat. No sense waiting, he says to Smelt, unsheathing his knife. The slaves are here or they aren't. Either way, Homer Figg has outlived his usefulness. I'm trying to decide should I close my eyes or not when all of a sudden the darkness moves and takes the shape of a man. Samuel Reed, freed from his bonds, is swinging a 6-foot iron bar like it's a baseball bat at Stink Mullins is a cheap like it's a baseball bat and Stink Mullins is a cheap home run. Sorry, I messed it up. I'm going to say it again. Samuel, because it's the last line of the book. Of this chapter. Samuel Reed, freed from his bonds, is swinging a 6-foot iron bar like it's a baseball bat, and Stink Mullins is a cheap home run. All right, that's it. We will be on chapter 13 tomorrow when we come back at our earlier time, which will be 1:45, right? I think when we come back, A Wagon Load of Hope. Well, that's a better title now, isn't it? Okay, this is Dr. Nutferovich. Thanks for joining me in the reading room. I love this story. I'm so happy I'm reading about the mostly true adventures of Homer P. Figg. See you tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see you in the early bird classroom at 8 a.m. sharp or somewhere around there. Thanks for joining me. This is Dr. Nutferovich. I'm the teacher. This is a classroom.